Hello, my name is Diane Southard. Welcome to 4 Steps to DNA Success. Now, DNA can be a complicated endeavor, but I've found that if you break it down into concrete, actionable items, you can make a lot more progress than you might otherwise. So let's get started. Number 1, you need to determine a goal. Just like any other area in your life, if you wandered onto your DNA testing company website and started clicking on things randomly, you might learn some things, but in general, you're not going to get very far. So when you're making a goal for your DNA test, what you want to keep in mind is that you need to be looking for an ancestor who is fewer than 6 generations back from you. I like to think of it kind of in this way. If you're searching for someone who's your 4 times great-grandparent, you would need your 5th cousins to help you find answers to those ancestors. And those 5th cousins, they just don't share very much DNA with you. And DNA connections that far back can be a little bit, shall we say, wobbly. So do yourself a favor, and if you're going to use DNA testing for your family history, stick within this kind of 5-6 generation mark in your family tree. Now, of course, you're going to need to get a DNA test. So choose one of these 5 companies. They are what I would consider to be the genetic genealogy companies. They offer DNA testing, but they're also interested in helping you find an ancestor. Now, if you can't test with all of them, which is, I guess, the best advice I can give you, then this is a good option also. You can do something we call transferring. So transferring involves giving your actual DNA sample, your saliva or your cheek swab, to a company. They do the analysis, they generate a nice data file, and then you take that data file and you transfer it to another DNA testing company. This is a cheap and effective way to get your DNA into multiple databases. It's cheap because transferring is free. Yes, it's free, which, well, you really can't beat free. So if you don't want to physically test with every company, which is probably the best thing you can do, that's fine. You can physically test with Ancestry or 23andMe and then transfer your results into MyHeritage, Family Tree DNA, or Living DNA. Of course, what are you really looking for? What's the ideal situation? Well, I think the ideal situation is you use the tools at the DNA testing company to find what you're looking for. I know it sounds kind of simple, but really you want a company who's going to provide you with a good ethnicity estimate, some genetic tools, some genealogy tools, with a large enough database that's going to make it possible for you to find that one person that can help you answer the questions that you have. Now, which company can best do that for you? Well, I think every company has the potential to help you find that one person. But when we're thinking about numbers, you probably want companies who have the most number of people tested and who have genealogy tools. In my analysis, those 2 companies would be Ancestry and 23andMe, with MyHeritage coming in a very close third. Their database is much smaller, but they are so laser focused on your genealogy that I think they still have a lot of things that can help you. So that's first. Do the right thing, make a good goal, take a good DNA test. The second thing is really to understand relationships. So if you don't understand relationships, you're going to have a difficult time understanding your DNA test results. And when I say relationships, this is really what I mean. If you're looking at someone who's your 3rd cousin, it's important to know, even if it's just in the back of your mind, that that person, your 3rd cousin, is going to share one set of 2 times great-grandparents with you. That's what makes them a 3rd cousin. They share one set of 2 times great-grandparents. So that's your genealogy relationship to someone, but you also have a genetic relationship to someone. Your genetic relationship is measured in something we call a centimorgan. It's just a unit of measure for DNA. So the centimorgan is important, and it does help us determine relationships. So understanding that this genetic relationship relates to a genealogy relationship helps us better understand our DNA matches. The problem is there are a lot of genealogy relationships that correspond to a few genetic relationships. So for example, your DNA testing company, they might tell you that these 3 people are your 3rd cousins. Great, fantastic. All that means is that they're sharing the right amount of DNA to be a third cousin. It doesn't mean they are genealogically your third cousin, because people who share that much DNA could be your second cousin once removed or your second cousin twice removed. Now, before I go into my definition of removes, I just want you to really understand this idea of a genealogy relationship and a genetic relationship. So take a look at this. Let's say your genetic relationship says that you share 127 centimorgans. Okay, your genetic relationship then translates into a handful of genealogy relationships. So when you share 127 centimorgans, you could be half second cousins, or perhaps second cousins once removed, or maybe first cousins 3 times removed, or maybe third cousins, and I could go on. Do you see what's going on here? If you don't, let's do another example. Let's say you share 85 centimorgans with someone. Well, then you could be third cousins, half second cousins once removed, second cousins twice removed, first cousin 3 times removed. Do you get the picture? Just in case you don't, I have one more example. Do you see the problem here? That you have one genetic relationship represented by the amount of DNA that you share with someone. But that one genetic relationship opens up a wide variety of possibilities for your genealogy relationship. So just understanding that concept is going to help you be smarter in evaluating your DNA matches. Now, before we go on, I promised that we would understand what a removed relationship is. So here you are the child of your parents, and there's both of your grandparents. And I think you'll recognize that your first cousin is the child of one of your aunts or uncles, right? Now, I want you to think in your mind to yourself, picture your first cousin's child. Do you have that person in your mind? That person is your first cousin once removed. Okay? So that's usually the way we think of first cousins once removed, or somebody who's younger than us. They're the same age as our children, for example. But you can also have first cousins once removed that are older than you. So if you think about your father's first cousin, that person is actually your first cousin once removed. Okay? So when we see these relationships, you have to remember that the removed really just means that someone is on a different generation than you are. Okay, so in addition to these removed relationships, it's possible you have half relationships in your family tree. So again, here's Jim, here's his first cousin. Usually first cousins share about 800 centimorgans. Okay, but what if Jim's grandfather had another marriage from which he had other children who have other children? So that person now is going to be Jim's half first cousin. And amazingly, he'll also share about half the amount of DNA that a regular first cousin would share. Okay, so it's really important that you just understand that there's all these different kinds of relationships that can really be your genealogy relationship when you share a certain amount of DNA with someone else. All right, so we've covered determining your goal, staying focused, and understanding just relationships in general, and really the difference between a genetic relationship and a genealogy relationship. All right, now how do you move forward from here? How do you take that list of DNA matches and really dive in and start doing some genealogy? I'm going to call this next step counting cousins. And really, it's just sitting back and asking yourself, what kinds of cousins can help me answer the question that I have about my family history? So, for example, if you are looking for this ancestral couple right here, this is one of your 2 times great-grandparent couples. You're looking for them. You don't know who they are. What kinds of cousins can help you answer this question? And if you think about it, then you know other descendants of this couple would be your third cousins, right? Let's say this couple, let's make up a good story so that we can kind of frame it. Let's say this couple were immigrants and they moved here to the United States and they brought their youngest child with them. That was your ancestor, their youngest child. And you know who that is, but you know that they left back in their home country some other siblings that had jobs and had families already that stayed. Those descendants would be your third cousins. So understanding what kind of cousin can help you helps you focus on the right place in your DNA match list. So you would just go into your DNA testing company, you would look at your match list for those who are labeled with some kind of third cousin category. Let's say this is your list of matches in that third cousin category. What are you going to do with them? Well, first of all, you're going to look for known matches. These are people who you can tell by either you know them personally or you can see in their family history that they're connected to one of your other ancestors. So let's say you're able to make those connections to all of these third cousins, leaving only Polly and Martin. Therefore, Polly and Martin are what I call your best matches. They're the ones you're going to start with. They're the ones that you're going to contact. You're going to focus on their genealogy, trying to look for common locations, for example, that might lead you to the identity of your missing ancestral couple. So that's the basics of how to attack a match list. Decide your question, and then focus on the relationship that's going to help you answer your question. So that's step 1, step 2, and step 3. Step 4 will always be do genealogy, because after all, this is genetic genealogy. And hopefully that makes you excited that we've kind of gotten over the genetic part, and now we're into the do genealogy part. So let's go back to our example with Polly and Martin. Essentially, it's time to do genealogy, and you have a choice. You can either do your own genealogy and look for Polly and Martin as descendants of a couple, or you can do their genealogy, do other people's genealogy. And let me just tell you up front, if you're going to do genetic genealogy, you will spend a lot of time doing other people's genealogy. So let's see how that might look. So if we're looking at Polly and Martin, what do we know about them? We know how they're connected to you because of their DNA. We determined that they were some kind of third cousin. At least that's where we're going to start. I call this your generation of connection. This is where you need to look in Polly and Martin's tree in order to find your connecting ancestor. So what does that mean? Well, it means you need to know all of those ancestors on that third cousin line for Polly and Martin. You're probably going to need to do some of their genealogy. The hope is, as you're doing their genealogy, you don't hit the same brick walls that you have with your own genealogy, and you're able to identify that ancestral couple that you're missing, but that you share with one of them. So doing other people's genealogy is a really good way to try to figure out the line that you're missing. But honestly, you can get a long ways by doing your own genealogy. For example, you have all of these ancestors on that line, and if you haven't done descendancy research to find all of the relatives that come down off of these lines, it's possible that Polly and or Martin actually descends from a line you already know. You just didn't recognize it. So it's helpful to do your own descendancy research. We spend so much time trying to push our lines back, and we should. But in genetic genealogy, one of the most helpful things you can do to help you solve an unknown ancestor problem is to find out as much as you can about your known ancestors. And that involves doing descendancy research on these lines. So give that a try, and perhaps you'll be able to identify more of your DNA matches, verify connections, and leave you open to really recognizing which matches don't fit in your current knowledge and therefore may lead you to find the ancestors that you're missing. So that's it. That's your 4 steps to DNA success. There's a lot of meat in here, so start at the beginning, go step by step, one by one, and see what you can find. Thank you for joining me. Again, my name is Diane Southard, and you can do the DNA. You just need the right teacher. If you're interested in learning a little bit more, you can attend some of my other RootsTech classes. I am teaching here and also in the vendor area, teaching a few classes there. You can also visit our booth and ask your DNA questions there. We would love to see you. Come and chat with us about your DNA question or problem. Also, if you'd like to connect with us on social media, you can find us here. And we have a website, we have a newsletter. There's all sorts of fun ways that you can connect with us. I've also got a couple of coupon codes for you here if you're interested in reaching out and connecting with us in that way. But mostly we just want to be here to support you. So let us know what we can do to help you in your genealogy research.